A married 63-year-old who hides her growing desire for her daughter's ex. She knew it was wrong. Every time he walked into her kitchen, smiled that familiar smile, and said, "Hey, Mrs. K." She felt something crack inside. He used to be her daughter's boyfriend. Now he was just around. And the worst part, she started wishing he'd stay longer. Can a mother's heart betray her logic in silence? Let me know in the comments. No judgment here. Rachel Klein was 63, married, former high school librarian, known in the neighborhood for her homemade pie and calm voice. Her marriage to Tom had lasted 38 years. Not passionate, but stable. They slept in separate rooms now, blamed it on snoring, but really it was the distance. Her daughter, Hannah, 28, had dated Ben for nearly 2 years. A kind young man, charming, respectful, always remembered birthdays, they say. Broke up quietly, no drama, just different paths. Rachel missed him, not as a son-in-law, just as someone who once brought life into their quiet home. And then one day he came back, holding a box of Hannah's books she had left at his place. It had been 7 months since the breakup. Ben had a new haircut, less boyish, more defined. A subtle beard lined his jaw, and his eyes, always kind, seemed more grounded now. He wore a button-down, sleeves rolled up. Rachel noticed the veins on his forearms, how his watch sat loose on his wrist. They sat in the kitchen while Tom was out golfing. The afternoon light filtered in through the blinds, casting soft gold onto the worn oak table. She poured them both tea, added lemon to his without asking. She remembered he liked it that way. They talked about old recipes. He complimented her. "New haircut." "It suits you," he said, his voice gentle, almost reverent. She laughed, freely, openly. Something in her chest loosened. He asked about her favorite authors. She led him to the small bookshelf in the hallway, showed him her annotated copy of To the Lighthouse. He ran a finger slowly under one of her underlined passages. "What is the meaning of life?" That was all, a simple question. He looked up. "You've always had beautiful taste." As he got up to leave, he rested his hand on her shoulder. Just a second too long, just enough. She froze for a moment, then smiled politely. That night, Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror longer than usual, brushed her hair line by line, wondering why her heart fluttered like a teenager's. Wondering if she should have said more or less, she applied a dab of lipstick, looked at herself, then wiped it off with the back of her hand. She told herself it was nothing, but she laid out her nicest nightgown, the one with lace at the collar, and when she slipped into bed, she noticed she was holding her breath. Not because of guilt, but because somewhere deep down she felt something stir, and she didn't know whether to fear it or welcome it. Ben started showing up more, bringing over things Hannah had forgotten, then helping Rachel move patio furniture, then dropping by just to say hello. She started baking again. Apple pie, scones, his favorite lemon loaf with extra glaze. She told herself it was just to use up ingredients. She fixed her hair before he came, switched to that pale blue blouse she hadn't worn in years, wore earrings, not because anyone noticed, but because she wanted to notice herself again. They began sharing stories, not just surface stuff, but real things. He told her about a poem he once wrote in high school that got laughed at. She told him about the first time she wanted to leave Tom, back in year 15, but didn't. They laughed over things no one else in the house would have understood. One rainy afternoon, he came in soaked. She handed him a towel. Their fingers brushed. He held her gaze a second too long. She made tea, he dried off. She sat closer than usual. He read her one of his poems. It wasn't brilliant, but it was raw, honest. Something about a field of marigolds and a woman who always wore linen. Her breath caught on a line she didn't expect. She reached out, touched his hand. Just to say she heard him, he didn't move away. In fact, he leaned, slightly in. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. He looked at her, quiet, serious, and said, "Neither do I, but it's the most I've felt in months." Her heart thundered. She thought about her wedding ring, still on. But suddenly, so heavy. Then her phone rang. It was Hannah. She flinched. He pulled back. She stood abruptly, said something about the pie in the oven, but they both knew there was no pie. Reality came crashing back, and it tasted like heat and guilt and longing. She watched him leave from the kitchen window, his shirt still damp at the shoulders, his hands stuffed in his pockets, and she whispered to no one, "What am I doing?" Rachel pulled back. She stopped replying to Ben's messages, told him she was busy, took longer to respond when he asked about helping in the garden, avoided places they used to sit. Instead, she tried to focus on Tom. She made his favorite meals, watched his golf shows beside him, let his routine become hers again. But even when she laughed at the screen, it felt hollow, like a smile worn too often had begun to fade. The silence between her and Ben was heavier than she expected. It didn't feel like distance, it felt like loss. One Thursday morning, she found a letter in the mailbox. No stamp, no envelope. Just folded paper in handwriting she recognized immediately. "I didn't mean to feel this way, but I do, and I think you do too." Her hands shook. She held the note to her chest like it might stop her heart from breaking open. She didn't respond. Not with words, but that night she stood by her window looking out into the dark, not crying, just waiting. For what? She wasn't sure. Maybe a knock. Maybe closure. Maybe the courage to forget. A week passed. Then two. Rachel started driving. A different route home, one that passed the cafe where she knew Ben wrote. She pretended she needed something from the hardware store near his gym, always with the same thought. What if he's there? She never went in. Just glanced from the car. Sometimes saw someone who looked like him and felt a strange mix of hope and dread. Then one late afternoon she saw him, sitting under a tree at the park, headphones in, scribbling into a notebook. He looked peaceful, alone, but not lonely. The kind of quiet presence that had first drawn her in. She parked but didn't get out, just sat there, watching from a distance, watching long enough to know he was okay, long enough to ache, long enough to let go, without needing to say goodbye. Weeks passed. She thought of him less. But when she did, it came in flashes, not of what could have been, but of what almost was. One morning, Ben came to return a garden tool. Her husband was home. They acted normal, casual conversation about tomato plants and rainfall, as if they hadn't once shared glances that lingered too long. But as Ben walked away, he glanced back. Their eyes met. Rachel felt the ache rise in her chest, familiar, sharp, soft all at once. That evening she sat in the living room while Tom snored gently in the recliner. The TV played some rerun she couldn't name. She wasn't watching. Instead, she pulled out a note card from the writing desk. One of the expensive ones she used to send holiday thank yous. She wrote slowly, deliberately. A single line. "You reminded me I'm still capable of feeling, but I'm also capable of doing what's right. Thank you for both." She folded the card, placed it in a drawer next to an old Valentine from Tom. That card, once scribbled in boyish blue ink, simply read, "To my favorite librarian. Always yours." She stared at the drawer for a long moment before closing it, gently, like sealing away a chapter. That night, she didn't cry. She made tea, took her book to bed, slipped on a cotton nightgown instead of silk. She never saw Ben again, but sometimes when she waters the garden, she thinks of him, the way he said her name, the quiet in his presence, the part of her that bloomed briefly, and not with regret, but with quiet gratitude, because some people come into your life not to stay, but to show you a version of yourself you had forgotten. And that's enough. Some desires aren't meant to be acted on, but they show us something we've forgotten, that we are still here, still capable, still alive. Have you ever fallen for someone completely off limits? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below.